So when you're working with athletes, you shared earlier, all right, injury prevention, to make sure we're durable, make sure we can stay out in the field. What are the most preventable injuries that coaches miss in their training, either leading up to sport, off season, or during a season, just unilaterally?
Yeah. Well, one, I think it's important to clarify that nothing's totally avoidable, right? Like, we don't necessarily know what positions an athlete's going to get in on the field, on the court, especially the stress state they're in, things of that nature. But there's a lot of things we can minimize the risk in.
That's what I'm saying, right? Just the most preventable.
So I just got to make sure I'm clear on that, right? Because you can't avoid everything, right? But we can really reduce the risk of things. And so one of the things that I see a lot of, and that you'll see a lot of physical therapists talk about and deal with, is foot, ankle, and knee issues. A lot of it just stems from our footwear, right? And I would actually take that a step further and say that goes to stem from our lack of foot awareness and foot strength. I think that, we get locked up in these shoes, and think about if you're wearing like a cotton glove, right? And then I put an oven mitt over that. How good is my proprioception, my sense of feel and touch, and I can grab things, right? Well, think about like the hands or the feet of the lower body. So when I have my foot always in that glove of, really, I don't even say that, it's a mitten, really. Most of our socks, unless you're wearing toe socks, I do that sometimes.
You're a weirdo.
I do. I have toe spacers on right now too. Anyways, but they're really more in that mitten and then a thicker mitten over them. And so, I have no real ability to feel and grasp myself into the ground, which is my direct connection to, take me to move or jump or run, whatever I want to do. So footwear and stability up that chain through the foot, the ankle, and the knee. I think another big thing that you'll see is a lot of low back and hip issues that can often be minimized. Again, I don't want to say totally avoidable, but minimized through just good, strong trunk and core training. I tell all my athletes, your core is your shoulders through the hips. And I really like to teach my youth athletes core, shoulders through the knees. Like, it's the core of the body. It's that center portion of the body. It's not just your abs. Your abs are a portion of your core. It's not your entire core. So getting a strong trunk and strong hips, glutes, especially glutes and adductors, but those are the basis of your spine. And so if you don't have a good base or a good foundation of the spine, you're going to see things trickle up chain.
It just seems like that, what you just shared, it is not, it seems like it wouldn't be missed in gross fashion. It just seems to be missed in terms of like volume over time. It seems like you feel like you hit it and then you can kind of move on. And I think it's those gaps and that lack of consistent training that opens up those areas for injury when you move. I just personally feel that way when I'm in really, really good shape. If I go out and chop wood, I'm like, I feel like I get hit by a truck. Like, why did that hurt? I'm like, well, when's the last time you did that movement? When's the last time you did a spinning turn? Like, if the answer is not very much, my body's going to tell me that story. But it's like, no one's trying to hit me back. Yeah. And like in other sports where there's other forces playing on my body. So I could just see how you can get in compromised positions from that.
Well, and I think a lot of the things that we use to build those, plank holds, glute bridges, things of that nature, just stability work, that seems basic. It's not the sexy stuff. And once you start to get good at it, even though it may continue to be implemented, what is your intent? Going back to what we talked about earlier. If I don't have the intent to keep everything rigid and tight as possible and really challenge it, if I'm not challenging it, am I going to create adaptation that it's going to get stronger? Right? And
maybe coaches communicating to the athletes how this is going to cross over to sport.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think the stuff that I left out, and I coach pole vault at our local high school, and it's trying to keep them not bored when they're doing the things that must be done, like over and over and over. And I talk about when am I going to get this? When you get to 10,000, 20,000 reps? What? Yeah. Well, how am I going to? Yeah, but you better just keep doing them every day like I have. And over time, you won't have to think about this anymore.
Yep.
Same thing with core, glute strength, like all the way down and feet. How many coaches right now are like, everyone take your shoes off. We're going to be doing drills with like this. We're going to be doing barefoot walks, barefoot run, like all those things. I bet it's out there, but I bet that's pretty rare. And do you have a lawn at home? Most people listening probably do. You know what I mean? Can you take your can you do a lot of this stuff's pretty accessible, if you will, to do.
You also got to be really cautious when you start trying to implement these things. Like if you go out and you're like, oh man, I've been in a shoe for 20 years. I never go around barefoot. And you go out and just try and barefoot run, you're probably going to hurt yourself. You need to make sure that, again, the body can handle the demands you're about to try and impose on it. And so do I have the tissue tolerance in that? Do I have the range of motion to do the things that I'm trying to do? You want to slowly progress and build your way into those things. And that's why it's important to have a good training program in place that helps make sure that you can see that plan and that progression to where you're trying to get to and make sure it makes sense. But if you go out and just be like, oh, I'm going to start running with my shoes off, and you go out, even on an open field or turf field, it's soft cushion, nice and level, like you're likely to have some sort of muscle strain at minimum.
I feel like that way when I'm like going to the beach and I get in my car, I have to walk over like large gravel.
Yeah.
I realize how weak and soft I am when I take my shoes off. If you ever want an ego hit, if you're listening, that's a great way to just show like I'm fit and I'm like, I can handle anything. Take your shoes off and walk across that gravel. Like that'll be really put it in a perspective for you. And then you watch people in third world countries like sprinting full speed over like broken glass and you're like, what just happened? It's like that training adaptation that comes in. Any other things you feel is worthy to share for anybody listening for preventable injuries and maybe even things I can do about it?
Yeah, I think the one thing that, and I'll always bias this because it is my field, my realm, but muscle is protection, right? And so the more mass or muscle mass you have around a joint, generally it's going to protect the joint. However, that muscle needs to be functional. So if you take a bodybuilder, for instance, that has a lot of muscle, what's the function of that, right? The function that they performed is just to grow, not to necessarily handle these different planes of motion and these different ranges of motion at the intensity and the speed or for the duration you will see on the court or the field. And so, making sure that, you are training for functionality as well. And that's where, going into some basic points about it is, both endurance and power and range of motion. Like if you can focus kind of on those variables, can you do something for a lot of reps with little to no weight? Can you do something heavy with, a decent bit of weight or relative strength to you? And then can you do it fast? I think if you can do those three things, a lot of times that you will be less likely to, I guess fourth, can you move through those different planes of motion? Mm-hmm. But I think if you can do those, you're generally going to check a lot of boxes.
Excellent.